Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast, the weekly show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we talk about magical gatherings and whatever's going on. And we got some fun stuff to talk about today. We have some Modern Horizons 3 leaks, as well as, well, leaks. There have been spoilers. They're official. They're real. We promise. Yeah. So it's not even allegedly this time. Like, for real. Anyway, we're going to talk about Modern Horizons 3. We also have some fun, a lot of activity going on in the competitive space right now with some recent tournaments and some upcoming tournaments, as well as a little bit of drama, so you're going to want to stick around for that. So, my name's Graham. I go by Hammox42 on the internet, and I'm joined by two lovely gentlemen today. We have Carlo C. Fairverda Jr. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
No complaints, man. And we also have Damien F16 in the house. Damien, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. It's spring. The weather's really nice right now. I'm loving everything except the Magic not rotating, but maybe soon. Anyway,
I hear you.
We'll see about that. Hopefully you guys are doing well as well, so that's good to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah, no complaints. Yeah, no, standard is it still is. It still is. So if you like the current standard, enjoy it, because boy howdy, we've got it. In any event. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get things started. We're probably going to discuss that as well, because, you know, what's been going on with the standard meta, kind of how Arena's been playing recently, because we have Thunder Junction. There's been some changes to metagames based on kind of recent competitive play, but at the end of the day, you know, turns out Atraxa and Rafine are still good. Breaking news.
Thought that.
That's crazy, right? Yeah. Good cards are good. But speaking of good cards, there's a set that's coming out. And it's going straight into Modern. And it's designed to make an impact on Modern. Some would even say rotate Modern, as we've seen with Modern Horizons in the past. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a little egregious. Maybe that's a bit much. But at the end of the day, we all know that if a set is going to make an impact on the Modern format, the cards have to be nuts, right?
Sure, yeah. Yep.
So I gotta be honest, the Modern Horizons 3 spoilers that we've seen so far, we've only seen a small sliver of the set. And I want to give a huge shout out to the folks at WotC for how they've handled it. So in the past couple of weeks, there have been pretty significant leaks from Modern Horizons 3 that have been kind of circulating on social medias and making the rounds as they do. And, you know, a lot of us, you know, WotC fearing content creators try to avoid leaks whenever possible, because you never know what's real, what's not. It's always frustrating. You definitely don't want to get in, you know, the bad graces of the company that make the game. All kinds of reasons why we don't want to engage with that stuff. But this time, instead of going on some, you know, massive tirade against the leaks, they just said, yeah, these are real cards. Here are the high-res images so that y'all can talk about them. These are official. Yes, they're real.
I really liked in the article where they called the images that were out there taken on a potato camera.
It's so true, man.
They mentioned it multiple
times.
They always
are.
At least if you're going to take pictures of leaks, at least have a good camera to do it.
I know. Every leaker has the worst, got a Motorola flip phone from 2006. And
it's amazing.
You know, pictures. And they all have gnarly long fingernails for some reason. Anyway. But it's great of Wizards to acknowledge it, because I think this kind of thing is never going away. I think every set, we're just going to have leaks from now on. In this day and age, in this digital age, and how that fast things spread, and how easy it is to, you know, find things in the trash, or find, you know, you remember that whole story with the landfill where they had, speaking of Modern Horizons, it was all old Modern Horizons stuff and other really expensive stuff. You know, anyway, there's so many ways it can happen. I think Wizards is better off doing this than calling the Pinkertons like last time, right? And
100%.
So, yeah, like what you said before the show as well with that. It's just such a sharp change, and good for the better. So
100%.
Speaking of these leaks / spoilers, what can we jump into? Some of them are spicy. Why don't we each take a turn? Who wants it? Ham, do you want to lead us off here?
I mean, I certainly can. So there are a handful that I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about the one that I think people are going to, if people aren't already screaming that this needs to be pre-banned in Commander, I guarantee that discussion, that talking point will come up. I mean, and let's be honest, I feel like Mirkwood Bats has taught us the lesson that we do need to start pre-banning stuff in Commander. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, and the
just taste the sarcasm.
Was it Lutri pre-banned, right? Wasn't that
Lutri actually was pre-banned. That one I think is a little more understandable, especially with the old companion rules, but still, regardless. But the one that I'm thinking of here is Winter Moon. So what if Winter Orb was Blood Moon? Kind of. Not really, but this is an artifact for 2. Players can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap steps.
Yeah.
I love this.
I
Freddo
do too,
remembers
is
he
the
still has
thing.
nightmares about the back to basics I played against you guys in Vegas there. I was such a
Right?
jerk. I'm
Right.
so sorry. I'm so
Hey,
sorry.
no,
but
it's okay.
this is better, right? It goes in every deck though. It's colorless. I don't
Run
know,
more
Freddo, what do you
basics.
think?
I'm over here running Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds in all of my commander decks. I have zero problem with this.
Nice.
I think generally speaking, greedy mana bases, there should be a downside for running greedy mana bases. And so decks that can punish, or cards that can punish that, I have zero problem with that. Now that said, when we talk about commander, know that you're probably not going to make a lot of friends playing this, especially if you have folks who are really going hard on their mana bases. Because if they spent $1,000 on a really sweet mana base and then none of it untaps, sure, I'd be upset by that. But
I guess I'm just like not a fan of cards that just don't let somebody else play the game. Like, I'm cool with people playing like control decks, like counter spells, fine. All of those things are fair. They might be annoying, but they're fair. This card is unfair, and it just doesn't make for a good play experience. It's kind of like when somebody casts infinite wrath spells at your table, and they cause the game to go on like 2.5 hours for some reason. And listen, you can have fun 2.5 hour commander games, but like this card just makes you not have fun anymore. And we'll turn that 2.5 hour game into a quick 20-minute game. Goodbye, Scoop, next game. And I mean, if that's your goal, that's fine, I guess. But it's just not a fun card. Like, this is probably well placed in, like, let's say CEDH. I don't even want to touch that format. Not ragging on it at all, but like, not my jam.
It's a different
but
thing.
It's others' jams. Like, that seems like a fine card in that type of a format, right? Because you want to make sure your opponents are dead by turn 4, and so like not letting them use their mana base seems fine. It's fine when this type of a card is in back to basics. Like, one color has this type of card, but once you give the ability for everybody to do it.
It's funny. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. And this is funny because I like the fact that this card exists. I will defend this card. I will also not include it in any of my commander decks unless I have one that is designed to be high power, highly competitive, and just a little on the sweatier side,
I mean, I think you're right in it's all about context. And in commander, in casual commander, this is not a good card. It's not a fun card. It's not designed for that format. Are people going to play it? Probably. I don't know if they will. But that's why Commander has Rule 0. That's why there are groups and they say, we are not going to allow this, not going to allow that. So these cards, as much as I agree with you again, for Freddo and you, Ham, we all agree that it's not fun. And, yes, I play these style of cards in my deck. I have like Static Orb and, all the orbs and the moons. And but it's a different type of thing. It's kind of specifically made to be that kind of obnoxious thing. But this needs to be a pressure valve for actual competitive. They need stuff like this for competitive. And just like they need Force of Will and they need free counter spells and people can, bitch and moan about that, and sweepers and they're too good and whatever. But we need that to some extent. It's bad when they're too pushed and they dominate the format. But this needs to be in the set. But it should absolutely be ruled zeroed at your local commander game. I think a lot of shops and a lot of, whatever your group is, you could probably just say, we don't allow this. And I don't think anybody would complain, right?
Oh, 100%. I'm certainly not here to cast judgment on anybody who has this on their house ban list. Like, I get it. That's totally fair. I think,
so it's okay. But powerful card, colorless, goes in everything. It seems really sweet. I
mean, do you think this is going to see play in Modern, like at least coming out of the sideboard?
Sure.
I mean, why wouldn't it, right?
It needs, those kind of formats need these pressure valves. They need stuff like this. You need these hate cards sometimes. Combo decks, storm decks, you name it. There's all kinds of wild stuff happening. You need to be able to keep that in check, and this is kind of one of the tools to do it. I don't know how impactful it'll be. I'm not crazy, into Modern right now. I kind of have a passing knowledge of what's going on in the format, but I don't play a ton of games myself, so I can't speak to like specific decks that might want this. Obviously, I can imagine decks that get wrecked by this, I don't know, Amulet Titan or decks that are playing a lot of non-basics, 4-color, control. I don't even think it's a deck anymore. But anyway, so interesting card. I think it's
reminisce on the days of 4-color control, Damien. Bring it back.
The money pile.
Listen,
Give me Yorion. I just wanted to play more Magic cards. That's how I love the Magic that much. Speaking of
the Yorion ban
oh, yeah.
announcement will still be the funniest thing that WotC has ever written. It's like, well, with the amount of shuffling, we're worried that this deck size is going to be a problem. Like, really?
Triple-sleeved Yorion.
Yeah, because modern
4 feet
players
tall.
famously have smaller hands than Commander players. I don't know if you knew that. That's
Oh,
apparently
that's a thing.
yeah.
So they were fumbling with Yorion all
it's
the
an
time.
80 card
Commanders
deck.
are players.
You're shuffling an 80 card deck. I mean, who can do that? Anyway.
There's a higher proportion of Commander players in the NBA. Everybody knows that.
Of course, yeah, naturally.
So
Anyway,
moving on, I've
David,
got
what
another
you got?
busted card, and it's
let's
also
go.
colorless. But you know what's often really gets me going, and I love that you called this from the last set was Fomori Vault. I'm having so much fun with Fomori Vault, amazing land. We'll get to that later.
Absolutely.
But Ugin's Labyrinth. Ugin's Labyrinth gets revealed, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, right?
Stupid.
Like, how many times they gotta print a land like not just Ancient Tomb and stuff, but like Eldrazi Temple, Eye of Ugin. Like, why are we trying to make Eldrazi relevant? Everybody hates them. I hate players who play Eldrazi Tron. They're the most reviled players in Modern. No, I don't hate them, but they get a lot of flack. Everybody hates playing against Eldrazi Tron, and they give them the Labyrinth. Why? It's so good. It gives them, it's a soul land, ring land for those who are not familiar, like a land that taps for 2 colorless, City of Traders, Ancient Tomb, like that. Yeah. And then they get the card back.
Yeah.
Think about this. I can turn one. Sorry, before the play I
you're
heard
going
was
exactly
so
where
ridiculous.
I want to go, so take it.
Ugin's Labyrinth, hide my best card under it, and then they can't even Thoughtseize it, and then later I just get to put it back in my hand and play it whenever I want. It's safe. It's safely imprinted, and I can just take. That's ridiculous. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no, that's absolutely ridiculous, and that's ultimately the thing. We've seen cards like Chrome Mox in the past, where the like you get this free, or you go positive on mana at the cost of cards. You have to go down cards. The idea you have to imprint onto it. And this has that, where you have to imprint it, except late in the game, you can just tap the land and return it to your hand. That's ridiculous. Yeah. If the card never came back, okay, it's still very strong, it's still good, but yeah, exactly. I can't Thoughtseize, appropriately, your Ugin the Spirit Dragon or your 7-drop Karn, like, I can't touch that now? Get out of here. That's...
Grief Scam is one of the best openings in Modern still, and you just are immune. You get to put that Karn or that giant thing away, and it's like, it's kind of crazy.
It's nuts.
But
yeah,
Redo, what do you say?
If you're on the play, like I mean, obviously, I think this card is fantastic. It's only fantastic when you are on the play with this card. If you're on the draw and you're against Grief Scam, they're still Thoughtseizing you twice.
Sure.
And so, they take out the source you need for this, and then this just becomes a land that taps for 1 colorless. But that just speaks to the power level of the format. So like, can a card like this keep up with the current power level of Modern? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we'd have to see like the other cards that may get spoiled in the set.
Yeah, I think the floor is very high on this, though, right? I feel like there's no price to pay. Like Ham was saying, imprint at least costs you a card. There's always a price you're paying for that power. There's no price anymore on a lot of these really powerful cards. It just feels like you get to do it all, and there's no real cost. The floor is what you described, I guess, being on the draw, which is just something that you're going to have.
But the other thing is, too, that Tron, like traditional Tron, moved away from playing 7-mana Karn in the deck.
Right,
and
that's true.
It's been a deck that's been more reliant on 4-mana Karn plus the One Ring. And because, the One Ring is also powerful, and nothing wrong with that card. So I don't know if this means that deck goes back to playing some amount of the 7-mana card just to play this.
Yeah.
7-mana Karn is great. Hey, listen, I, like every other Tron player, love tapping out 7-mana. Big Karn, exile card. But that type of Tron deck is also just slower and less effective against the scam decks.
Right. You're right, and I said Tron, or I said Karn there when I was using that example, but I don't actually see Tron. I don't think Karn, 7-mana Karn, is good enough for Modern anymore. Really, is what it is. I said Karn because that's what the Tron decks always play until recently.
Yeah, you're right.
But the Eldrazi stuff, there's a bunch of Eldrazi they could jam in here, and it would be good. So that's what I initially would imagine. This goes into an Eldrazi deck, which is already like. kind of fringe playable. Modern's weird. It's got like a massive number of tier 2 decks, like just floating below tier 1. Just a huge number, 30, sub 40, I don't even know. Tons. And one of them I think is Eldrazi Tron. It's very, powerful and, it has good interaction. It's, got a lot of awesome utility lands. This just seems like it could be revitalizing a strategy like that. I don't know. We'll have to see, but
and listen, it's beautiful showing up. Like the last Modern event I went to was SCG Philly recently, and they had big Modern 10K there and a 5K the day before, 5K the next day, all Modern. It's a format that your Paper Magic Modern players can just take whatever deck that they had from 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago and show up, and it's the cards that they just will always have and want to jam their favorite cards in this format. So you get those people who show up with Eldrazi Tron. I even saw somebody playing the Eldrazi Obligator or whatever it's called. It was like the 3 mana spell, 2 in a red, the thing that steals an opponent's creature and threatens it for the turn. Like I hadn't seen that version of Eldrazi Tron in a hot minute. But my friend has their deck from 10 years ago, and they're like, I'm jamming it. I have the cards. I don't have to buy anything else. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's the beauty of Modern. Because the format is just so big, people can just play whatever they want. And even before all the scam decks were real popular, something I would always talk about was there's not enough sideboard slots for the Modern format.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to say that when older formats like Legacy and Vintage exist. But it's just so hard to prep to go to a Modern tournament. You only got 15 sideboard slots, and you need to commit them for the top played deck. So when you play against the fringe decks, your deck's bad because you have no idea how to answer them.
Yeah, any big Modern tournament with like 14 rounds, the first 3 rounds are just the Wild West, basically. Yeah, if you can get buys or something, that's huge leg up in the tournament.
I mean, that's the worst nightmare, though, right? It's going to the sideboard and realizing, like, I don't have anything I can bring in here. Like, this is...
And there's so many different axes that decks attack on, and they are all very powerful. Like, because the card pool is so big, they're all very capable of killing you very quickly and being consistent and everything else. Yeah, it's interesting. So, again, getting back to the cards in the set, that's a sweet one. We'll see if it sees play, but there's so many bangers here. Whose turn is it next here? Carlo, your turn?
Yeah, Carlo, what cards do you want to talk about from Modern Horizons 3?
Yeah,
and hit us with one.
I mean, let's get into Nethergoyf. Yeah, it's a mythic.
Nethergoyf, yeah.
One black mana for Nethergoyf.
Goyf lost away.
It is a star / 1+*. Power equal to the number of card types amongst cards in your graveyard, and toughness equal to that number +1. So this is Tarmogoyf for 1 black mana that has escape. So for 2 and a black, you can exile any number of other cards from your graveyard with 4 or more card types among them, and pay 3 and reanimate this from the yard. That's escape. So,
what do you think? Is it good enough?
Yeah,
I don't think Tarmogoyf is good enough for Modern anymore.
It's
not really playable. Hey, they reprinted that card in Fallout, and it's like $10. Even the Fallout version is $10.
So why is this better? I mean, 1 mana less, okay.
Or is it?
It's in a different color, so maybe that's relevant.
There is a pretty significant downside on it, though, as compared to Tarmogoyf. It only counts your graveyard, not your opponent's.
Why would they do that? I don't know why they did that. It's so weird. It would be maybe decent if it was both graveyards still, but it's not. The escape isn't worth that much, in my opinion, because so many things exile. Solitude, bang. Prismatic ending, or just... There's a bunch of ways that you can,
Rest in peace, Leyline of the Void.
Yeah, the escape is like, that's not a big enough bump to make that nerf, balance that out. The nerf of not doing both graveyards. Yeah.
And the cost of having to exile your graveyard when it on the battlefield sees your graveyard. I mean, you're powering it down to bring it back. So, maybe you had a 5/6 on the battlefield, but when you escape it, it comes back as a 2/3. Like, all of a sudden it's not nearly as impressive.
How big do you think you could make this if you lead with this on turn 1 and then swing on turn 2. What do you think the most damage is on turn 2 that you could realistically, like, you're playing a format that has a lot of self-mill stuff. There was a dredge deck, I know Faithless Looting's not around anymore, but there's some other stuff that, can dig. What's the best you can do? Like, you're hitting on turn 2 for maybe 4 damage if you're lucky, 3 damage maybe?
Probably, I would say more close to 3 if you're lucky.
Yeah, so
and that's assuming that you are putting a Mishra's Bauble in the graveyard,
right, or something.
Yeah, fetch land Mishra's Bauble. Yeah,
and even if that's the case, cards like Dragon's Rage Channeler is significantly better than this with Mishra's Bauble.
Well, and context is key here, because if this card was in, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, for example, I'd be like, strap in everybody, we're doing it in standard, like run those otherworldly gazes, let's get stupid, right? Like I'm 100% here for it. In Modern, I would be shocked if this is
the bar is much higher.
Having stats even this fast.
Yeah.
I can't imagine is going to be relevant.
Well,
when we talk about Grief Scam, it's like I'm already like you can pitch this to Grief. That's something, I guess. But like, if you're pitching your one drop, something's gone horribly wrong in your deck building, I think. But anyway.
Well, yeah, and I think, again, even if it's 3 power on turn 2 swinging, that's Wild Nicodle, and that card's not good enough for Modern, so why would this be? It grows a little bit bigger, like, that's not enough, right?
I like the design. I can't imagine it's going to be competitive,
I just wonder, so before we go on to the next card, there's a bunch of these cards. There's Nethergoyf, and there's Null Drifter, and there's, like, it's like they keep going, Spawn Gang Commander, White of the Reliquary. It's
a lot of the cards here are supposed to be a play on already existing cards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But why are they going so deep? Like, they've done this before, and it's like one card, maybe like one card every other set or one set. This is just like, okay, if it's Throne of Eldraine and the whole set is like puns and okay, it's all making fun of fairy tales, it makes sense. But like, there's so many of these cards that are just like these weird like alternate universe versions of the originals, and there's like you get the wording is clever and it's weird. There's so many. There's usually not as many. Anyway.
Well, and it's funny because we've only seen a handful of cards, and come to think of it, one of the very first spoilers we saw was Psychic Frog, which is clearly a play on Psychotog.
Right. Right, I forgot about
very
that
like
one,
unapologetically. So
yeah, it's just they're really leaning into it. I don't know. They
really
if
are.
They're just like Magic is getting more.
Let's fire up all that nostalgia. But then the funny thing is, a lot of the designs on these cards don't like. They're reminiscent of some of the originals, but they're changed dramatically. To make them kind of fit mechanically in certain areas. I mean, like Null Drifter you mentioned is one that is relatively new, and it's Eldrazi Mulldrifter. And it's a 4/4 instead of a 2/2, and it's a 7-drop instead of a 5-drop, and you can still evoke it for 2 and a blue, but it triggers on cast instead of ETB, and it has Annihilator, which
Annihilator 1.
Okay. Annihilator 1. I think that's there just to justify it being 7 mana. That way you can hide it away or you can imprint it onto your Ugin's Nexus. Yeah. But like, I don't know. It's just
anyway.
The decks that want Mulldrifter don't want this, and so I don't know.
Same with Spawn Gang Commander. It's just Siege Gang Commander with Eldrazi Spawn. Like, is that really a new card? Even it's still red. It's still the same casting cost. It's everything. It's just okay. I guess you can make mana with them now. That's I don't know. It's weird.
The larger question, really, though, is how many of these are actually modern playable?
Oh, none.
And very few, I'd imagine.
They're all cool and all, and I'm certain that the pre-release for Modern Horizons 3 will be absolutely spectacular. Or playing this from a limited perspective, like drafting's got to be super fun.
Oh yeah,
but in terms of me opening up a booster pack and trying to figure out how many of these cards that we've seen so far are actually playable in the format, that they're gonna make it so format warping like the other Modern Horizon set. I mean, that's the thing, right? Do you do another overpowered format warping set to address the fact that there's not enough either certain cards banned in the format or not unbanning cards in formats, and so you're doing this, right? I mean, a clear comparison here is the free spells in the set.
Yes.
And the free spell cycle in this set not being mythic, but rather rare. And considerably worse in terms of the spell being free. However, there are still good free spells. They're just not as strong. And I think the one you want to take a look at right away is the counterspell, right? Flare of Denial.
Oh, I have it ready. I definitely wanted to talk about this.
Yeah.
Thank you for creating that dovetail and just going straight into it. Love it, dude. Yeah.
So it's like we've done these podcasts before.
I know,
right?
it's almost like we've done this before. Yeah.
But yeah, so Flare of Denial at worst is a counter spell for 1 blue counter target spell. So it's
cancel
a
with
cancel.
sense mechanics. That's what.
But it says you can sacrifice a non-token. Really great blue creature rather than pay its mana cost. There's only one deck that this fits in current modern format for me, and that's Merfolk. Right? Sure. So if you're saying that you want to give Merfolk a free counter spell and not be able to sack the creature created off of Deep Root, whatever it's called, the 2-mana Ixalan cards.
Yeah.
Right. You can't even sack that token. So you have to sack actual Merfolk. So whether that's like Marrow Regery, if that's even still playable in that format, just to get the free counterspell. I mean, free counterspells are great. But this card isn't like subtlety.
I think. Well, no. I mean, the elemental cycle's busted. This is not the elemental cycle. Yes. Yeah. But I think this is powerful. Again, there's a bunch of there's decks I think that are again just below the surface that are gonna break into modern. For example, blue-red spells, blue-red prowess is so close to being really good, and that slick shot show off that just got printed may have actually been the card that kind of brings it together. This is the kind of thing that would see play in a creature tempo deck, right? Getting super like put those threats into play Delver style, like Murktide Regent would be a deck that might play, but they don't play blue creatures, so it would have to be more of a low to the ground spell slingers kind of deck. Nathan is in the format. I don't know. You're right. It's like you don't want to be sacking your board if you're an aggro deck anyway or a tempo deck. So I'm not sure exactly where it'll fit, but man, all I know is I'm going to be on the other side of it, and I'm playing some control deck or whatever, and I go to kill that Delver, that threat that's killing me, and they just free counter my spell by sacking something else. I don't know. I could see it being good, but I don't know what the deck is going to look like. So you're right.
It's funny you mentioned Delver because I have a sneaking suspicion that's going to be the situation that a lot of people find themselves in very early, is wanting to cast this to protect their Delver, but the Delver is the only thing they can sacrifice. So it's like, this does not work as well as I thought. Yeah. So.
But it's an interesting one, and free spells are like you've heard me rail against free spells on this very podcast. I think they should not exist when they're proactive. The only free spells that exist should be reactive. So I'm not sad to see that kind of effect get printed like that, and I think it's fair. And sacking a creature for all the reasons we mentioned is a drawback in a lot of the decks that are going to play this. So I think it's pretty balanced. I'm happy they're not pushing it too hard. But it's funny you mentioned how hard should they push it, and I think. Sadly, the answer is you can't not push it hard. If you set a bar really high like they did with the first one, and then they don't at least match that, then you're failing. You're disappointing everybody's expectations. You saw what happened with Commander Legends. That people were hyped for that. They thought it was going to be huge and everything else. And then it was like, was it Commander Legends? There was something that people were really disappointed in, and they thought it was going to be insane. And I remember thinking, with Commander Masters,
Masters was
I said Legends,
like twice
Commander
as much
Masters.
as they should have on that one, but
people were like, "What?" But they also set this really high bar with the first one, and then the second one was much worse in terms of power and stuff, or at least that's what I heard.
There was Commander Legends. The first Commander Legends had Jeweled Lotus and a couple of other like huge bombs. This set was kind of meh around, but it had a few fun build arounds and it was fine. And then they had Commander Legends 2 Battle for Baldur's Gate, which was a colossal failure, and it went down as just a massive dud, which is such a shame too because it was based off of Baldur's Gate 3 and had a lot of the same characters and lore, and it ended up being a huge hit. And it's funny, you saw the secondary market price on a lot of those cards like skyrocket. Like look at the price history on Karlach, and it's amazing because like the moment the game came out and people were romancing this character, they were like, "Oh, I can have her as my commander. Get out of here! This is great."
Okay, well, all I know is for a playability standpoint, I think people were disappointed in the power level of the set compared to the first one. So they as somebody who makes the game, like that's why Valve has never made Half-Life 3. That's why a lot of video game and other makers they don't do it because they know they can never meet people's expectations, especially with the hype. Modern Horizons was the best-selling Magic set ever printed until Lord of the Rings came out. So we're talking. The Crown just recently passed, but one of the best-selling sets of all time. How do you follow that up and not like push things? You kind of have to, right? So we'll see.
What I'm looking for is what I think most people were looking for in Modern Horizons 2, and that is where's my Renin 6 card? Like a card that's just so overtly powerful,
Ragavan.
right? That breaks formats, that questions if cards should be banned in the format because it's so strong. 2-mana Planeswalker that does everything, right?
Yeah.
So what's going to be the Ren and 6 card of the set? What's going to be the Ragavan of the set, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're looking for. The answer might be, hey, it just might be that Emrakul the World Anew is just busted.
Yeah.
And,
Maybe.
you know, giving Emrakul the World Anew a Madness pay 6 might just enable some type of better strategy that says, okay, I'm going to play Big Mama Emrakul, and I'm just going to I'm just going to take all your creatures.
At instant speed, which is ridiculous with Madness. Flash it in, take control of all your creatures. Yeah. That's a ridiculous one. Great. Yeah, they're pushing it. That does seem pushed.
Yeah, and that's a great example of a card that this would have to be its own deck, but maybe it's good enough to build that, to create it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, what was the other one? I mean, Hogak was kind of like that too. Or I mean, we'd had some dredge, graveyard stuff before, but I know that was its own a whole other mess as well.
Level. People were main decking Leyline of the Void, and it was still not enough. The deck was so good.
Yeah. Oh, that's which hopefully nothing's that pushed, but at the same time, maybe honestly, like given what we've seen so far, I suspect we haven't seen it yet. I think Emrakul is probably like the closest thing we've had so far that like maybe it can get there if the right pieces align, but. Other than that, I haven't seen, there's a lot of great utility pieces that we've talked about. And I totally agree that the draft environment is going to be amazing because I feel like these cards are going to be powerful. They're going to play well together.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also going to be a lot of the, oh, hey, remember this? That's kind of a riff on that thing, which that's fun. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we've seen the format defining bomb yet. Unless, is Orm's Chant going to be...
it's going to be annoying. I'm going to lose to that if I ever play Modern. God, that spell looks ridiculous. So what is Orange Chant?
Scepter is in Modern.
Scepter. Oh, Orange Chant is an instant for white with a kicker for white. So max 2. White. Target player can't cast spells this turn. If this spell was kicked, creatures can't attack this turn.
Right.
Yeah.
So on your upkeep, 2 mana just... You can play a land and give me the turn back.
Yeah, it feels like discontinuity, but they get to draw and play a land. That's all they can do. And that feels ridiculous. Yeah, a lot of ways to flash this back, a lot of ways to imprint this, like you said, is ridiculous. But
this on Ice Crown Scepter, that's a scoop.
What do you think,
right there.
Pareto, you think this is going to be good?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't think so. And the only reason I say I don't think so is just because the power level Modern is much higher than what this card does. I mean, Modern already has Silence. If somebody really wanted to, they could Scepter silence you every turn, and that's not a thing. So I don't think Scepter Chant is going to be a thing. It might be a little cute. Some people might want to, I don't know.
Sideboard card, maybe?
Yeah, but then it's like, what deck are you sideboarding it against?
I don't know.
That's major that you have to worry about.
Well, these effects, they always read like they're going to be so oppressive, but I don't know. Like right now, one that I can't help but think of that compare this to, obviously Orm Chant's better. I'm going to say that, but we're talking about a Modern set versus a standard card that sees 0 play right now in Calamity's Wake, which this one is an instant for 2. Exile all graveyards. Players can't cast non-creature spells this turn. And then you exile it. Yeah. So this is one that I remember reading the previews for Brothers War thinking this is going to be insane. There's going to be so many control decks or spellslinger decks that aren't going to be able to execute it because you timed this just right and it's going to be perfect. It just has not been the case at all. No. And Orange Chant feels like it's trying to function similarly. Granted, again, it's much stronger, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know exactly. I know it's a powerful effect, but I don't know what kind of deck would want this and what kind of deck you would want this against in Modern. I'm not sure. But I know it's powerful, and I know these are the kind of cards that may end up somewhere in a sideboard or some combo deck. I'm thinking like the last time I saw cards like Silence and things like that was like Eggs combo or with Angel's Grace and all that stuff. Just buying one more turn, like Phyrexian Unlife in the in the ad nauseum deck, like Esper ad nauseum and stuff
Yep.
like that. They just need one more turn. So they're playing a bunch of cards that just give them one more turn, because if they can combo off, they win the game. So I could see it in a deck like that where you're just trying to buy one more turn. And in Modern, one turn is like, many decks can kill you, from one turn to the next in turn 3, 4, whatever. So just buying another turn literally swings it from, okay, they won the die roll, they're going to combo off on turn 4, to I forced them not to, and then now I combo off. I don't know.
Well, or if
But-
you're about to combo off, or
Yeah.
if you have a Crazy Storm card, this is target player can't cast spells. It's not players can't cast spells.
Oh,
So the
right,
first
yeah.
spell
Do
could
it
be
on
like,
your
you
upkeep.
can't cast anything for the remainder of this game.
Right.
Okay, cool. Do you have like a
Protect my-
channel counter spell in your hand? Because otherwise, I'm just gonna do my thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Are
exactly.
you running Mirror Shell Crab? If not, haha, let's go. Anyway,
Mirror Shell?
I
Never
don't
leave
know,
home without it.
yeah, I don't.
Anyway,
just
but
yeah,
But
So
yeah,
the
I don't know.
possibilities here.
It's powerful.
There's something here.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's doing something unique. It's a cool one, but yeah, nothing that we're gonna again take over the format. The other card that I hear people talking about all the time is Kappa Cannoneer, and as somebody who's not a Commander player, I see it, I read it, I'm like, yeah, that's really powerful, but man, people are crazy about this card and saying it might actually have a huge impact in Modern. I don't know, in an Affinity Shell, or what do you guys think?
With Simulacrum Synthesizer.
Let's go.
Oh yeah, Simpson. There you go.
We got
yeah,
there.
I've been enjoying that card in Standard immensely recently.
Yeah. This is one of those cards that I haven't I don't currently play Modern, so I can't speak to it. And I don't play the other competitive formats like Legacy and whatnot, where this is like stepped up and been a thing as of late. Because it was originally printed in the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty Commander product and immediately took off. Like, this was one of those things where it was in that moment where like every card in the Commander deck was worth $1.50 at most, and this was like $9. And I understand on Magic Online, because the Commander products have a pretty limited release, the price for a digital version of this for a minute was
Insane.
incredibly expensive.
Wow.
So it's pretty clear that like I just didn't fully get it. 'Cause, like, how fast could you really get this down? The answer apparently very. So it's a 6-drop with Improvise. For those who don't know, it's a 4/4 Turtle Warrior, which pretty cool type line, and it itself is an artifact with Ward 4, so practically hexproof half the time. And then whenever it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it can't be blocked this turn. Note that doesn't only trigger on your turn. It doesn't only trigger once per turn. None of that jazz. It's just there. So this thing can get huge if you're rocking a lot of artifacts down.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, that's not hard to do. And I remember playing with Affinity back in the day, so we all know how many artifacts you can get down fast.
And it enters as a 5/5. It's effectively a 5/5, right?
Yes.
So it ETBs as a 5/5 immediately for 1 mana or 2 mana.
Right.
Better than any Tarmogoyf I've ever seen. And then it just gets bigger and bigger, like Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, and it can't be blocked as long as an artifact has entered the battlefield under control. Like, you just can't block it.
Nasty.
It's just gonna hit you.
So the fact that it's 1 mana or 2 mana in a lot of these affinity decks, like you guys said, with synthetic or simulacrum synthesizer, it's kind of ridiculous, because then you get to start making tokens, and those tokens pump the Kappa Cannoneer, and then he gets unblockable, and then you're just making more tokens. Like, that seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
I've
and
really
already
liked
in Modern, you can play the Simulacrum Synthesizer with like Frogmite, because it has affinity and costs 4.
Right.
The maybe it's not Simulacrum, something Sojourner. It's like a 7 mana affinity for artifacts.
Yeah, right.
4/4. It's like an uncommon. All of those cards also will trigger Kappa Cannoneer.
Sojourner's
Companion. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the new Mirror Enforcer. Yeah, effectively.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say Mirror Enforcer's got to be around, right? But this is just better. Yeah,
it's just strictly better Mirror
cycle.
Enforcer. It just has made Mirror Enforcer obsolete, unless you want to run like 6 of them, in which case, go nuts.
Yeah, that deck seems really sweet. I love the artifact decks. I wonder, in Modern though, again, high bar, is that good enough?
Is it good enough?
Maybe.
We'll see.
There is an artifact. There are multiple artifact lands that are actually legal in Modern now. Darksteel Citadel is not illegal. So Cannoneer would trigger just for you making that land drop. Coincidentally, the Sojourner searches for an artifact land for 2, which will enable that. And there's also some artifact lands from Karlov Manor too, right?
Right.
But they actually make clues.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Interesting.
Scene of the crime.
Scene of the crime. There you go. Yeah, enters tapped, granted, but it does trigger that artifact part of Kappa Cannoneer.
Yep.
And effectively can make you add man of any color, sack it, drawing a card.
Yeah, that one looks interesting. I'm worried about playing artifact lands when people can blow up artifacts easily. And they just target your land.
Literally, one of the other cards in the set is Meltdown, destroys each artifact.
There's that. We also have Treasure Vault from Adventure of the Forgotten Realms, which a lot of people forget about, but it is also an artifact land. You have the bridges from Modern Horizons 2; those are available. Yeah. So, but you're right. Meltdown is another hilarious one that it's getting reprinted, which is a classic. Honestly, this was from I think Urza Saga or one of the original Urza blocks. Just destroy each artifact with mana value X or less. It's just X and a red sorcery. Just melt them all. Yeah. I don't know if this is
always.
Yeah. Given that a lot of the improvise and affinity cards have huge mana costs, like. I don't know how easy this is going to be to really get good value, but it's a cool card. It's just an absolute classic. And
Shatterstorm is still in Modern. You could play a million other ways to blow up artifacts that are probably cheaper, like Shatterstorm does the trick. But I don't know if that deck will be real. Like, Affinity hasn't been a real deck since Mox Opal got banned. I wonder if that's enough. The Simpson and maybe something like Kappa Cannoneer, but
it's possible.
It'll be interesting to find out. But as fun as Modern Horizons is there any other cards? Do you guys want to touch on anything else here? I don't see anything that jumps out at me as too insane, but Null Elemental Blast?
Nothing in particular, but just a big thank you for the reprint of Fetch Lands.
Yes!
Right. We got new art Fetch Lands in the set. That, quite frankly, needed a reprint because Flooded Strand and Polluted Delta started to creep back up there. At Bloodstained Mire, they all started to really creep up there in price. So hopefully this helps bring the single price down a bit.
I don't even know what are they at now, the fetches? Like, now that, I guess, pre-announcement.
Remember? That's a good question.
Pre-announcement, I don't know if I can see that now. But I know Bloodstained Mire was like $30-some a piece.
Okay, they were up to 30.
Yeah, looking at Polluted Delta.
Blood Strand about $20.
Yeah, we're looking at about $30. Yeah, $30 to $40 is what it looks like. So, yeah, I mean the non-showcase Modern Horizons 3 Polluted Delta right now is pre-sailing at around $25 to $30. So, yeah.
Bring that.
Yeah,
and you just give that until opening up the product, and then it shoots down about $10, and then it'll rise back up $5, and then it'll settle.
Yeah. In general, don't buy on pre-sale prices often. When it comes to singles, they usually dip in the immediate few weeks, and then a Pro Tour happens, and the certain cards that are going to spike, and but anyway.
Yeah, pre-ordering.
Yeah,
Jace the Mind Sculptures for $30.
Let's go. The one thing so I'm really glad to see these fetch lands, and we obviously needed the paper reprint. The one thing that I find kind of interesting is that this set is going to be coming to Arena. And these fetch lands are going to be available on Arena, but these were, unless I'm mistaken, already the fetch lands we have from the Cons of Turkey Remaster.
That's correct.
So we don't have the complete set of fetches on Arena yet. For all you Timeless fans out there.
Right. And it'll stay banned in Historic, right?
Yep.
So Modern Horizons 3 on Arena will actually only be legal. Just looked it up to make sure. It's only actually going to be legal in Historic and Timeless. Unlike Lord of the Rings that they put into Alchemy, and that was a disaster.
Which, that's honestly for the best, because it was really weird to play a format that is theoretically on a standard power level, and your opponent is resolving the One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters. It's wait a minute.
Right. Anyway. Especially after standard rotated in terms of Alchemy. Yeah,
it's I can't play with fire, but you can play the One Ring. You sure? That's fine. No, this is fine.
Did they? I guess they didn't announce a rotation schedule for that. Do we ever know if Lord of the Rings rotates out of Alchemy? Probably not, right? I don't
Maybe that'll be happening this year. Honestly, I have not been paying attention to Alchemy even in the slightest, if I'm completely honest.
Let's not.
If you're out there and you're enjoying Alchemy, keep having your fun. No, I don't mean any condemnation to it. Just I'm not personally interested.
I'd like to switch to a format that we do care about and are interested in, or at least I still am. And I know we talked a little bit before the show, and you guys, Hammond, you were mentioning maybe not feeling super stoked about Standard these days. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah. So I mean, part of it, I'm assuming part of this is just personally where I'm at right now. So that is what it is. But I have been finding, so I love brewing janky decks. I love crafting new machines and trying to make something functional out of weird parts. That's the reason I love Magic. Ultimately, like bottom line, it's why I like this game. Is because I love to find different pieces, click them together in new, fun, interesting ways. And in Standard right now, we have what is lovingly referred to as a solved format, which, I mean, honestly, of course it is, because at this point we have a number of decks that have been around in one incarnation or another for over 2 years in some cases. You know, the Esper mid-range list has changed a handful of times as new sets have come out. You know, it didn't always have Deep Cavern Bed in it, but, you know, at the end of the day, for as long as Rafine has been legal, there has been some flavor of that deck as a top-tier meta deck. It just has been, you know? And, so anyway, so right now, over the last couple of weeks, I've been continuing to try to brew in Standard specifically on my stream, and I've been kind of hitting a wall. And I think part of it might just be a little bit of fatigue, because I feel like I've been playing kind of the same games a ton, but I'm also running out of stuff to try to build. And normally rotation is like a holiday in my house. It's a big deal. I love it. And it's, you know, I put up streamers, it's a whole thing, bake a cake. Like it's a big deal, right? And so the new rotation schedule that they're having, this past go around, the fact that the rotation didn't happen at all last year and everything just kind of built on itself, we're really feeling it. Yeah. Hopefully after the new rotation in August, we can get into a cadence that feels natural and things will be okay. But I liked the limited window, the 2-year window that we had previously, and fast rotations. If anything, I love rotations and I love them fast. Give me new cards constantly. Take the older cards that we're sick of seeing and move them out faster. That's what I like. And so we're in this zone right now where we're just a couple months away from the rotation. Yeah, and I'm feeling the stagnation in Standard right now, especially on the arena ladder. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, now you have the biggest part of Standard that you will ever have for the next couple months. The card pool is enormous. You know, thinking back to the reason why they extended Standard in the first place, it was so folks who had their cards, especially, you know, because of the pandemic and stuff, would be able to play with them longer. And then they would start to design the newer sets, starting with Karlov Manor, with the new 3-year rotation in mind, right? So I think part of it that you might be feeling is that problem, because that means they are creating pseudo-functional reprints of cards that currently exist in some of the sets that will rotate out. Yeah. You know, by replacing like Farewell with the final Showdown card, right? The instant speed Wrath. So that way you still have a 6 mana Wrath, but at instant speed, so it's better. Unless, you know, you care about the other modes of Farewell anyway. But, but even, you know, this card is great.
Final Showdown still has incredible modes on it as well. But
it does.
Sure.
Yeah. It does. But I 100%, I hear what you're talking about. You know, I think what's going to happen now, since we had the Pro Tour and sort of the metagame has become more like redefined. And I say redefined because a lot of the decks that you see played in the Pro Tour are essentially pre-boarded for the top matchups that they're going to play against. That's why you saw a lot of decks that had like 1 of this or 2 of this card in it, and especially amongst the Japanese players, because they love to do that. Damien talks about this all the time on his stream, how it's like their signature, right? To their spin on the deck. It might not be the best version of the deck, but it's what they think is going to help them battle the top 3 decks of the metagame that they expect to see at the Pro Tour, or at that high-level Magic play. And so, taking those decks from the Pro Tour and having some tournament results after the Pro Tour to see, okay, where is the metagame settling, and are people innovating? You certainly do not see the same decks as you did in the Pro Tour. The metagame is not equivalent.
No.
At all.
Yeah.
Aside from like Convoke and Esper still being like essentially your top decks or top played decks in the format.
I agree. I think that's good. Yeah, that sums it up basically, yeah, everything you said there, I agree with. I think I think there is some room for innovation, but basically, I think I agree with the stagnation and everything else. The reason I think you may be feeling the way you feel is because of that weird. This is the longest we've played with these same cards since I think forever. Like we've never had an 11 set standard, and so Rafine and cards that were around right at the beginning of that, that run have felt like they've been here forever. Like, I know, I get that. But it's funny when you ask people about standard, a lot of people will say standard's great right now, and because there's a lot of variety at the top, even though yes, it's Rafine and everything, there's a lot of different archetypes right now. Like if you look at standards from even like 2 or 3 years ago or before the last rotation, there were very few tier 1 decks. It was 2 decks. It was blue red Alrund's Epiphany and mono green. And that was it. And there was like maybe 1 or 2 other decks. And people complained because the metagame was really crappy and small, and you had to play A or B or maybe C, but C is always a weaker choice. And now we've got like 6 decks, 7 decks that are tier 1. I would consider tier 1. So it's weird. You're right. There's less variety in the card pool because the cards are so old. And to Ferretto's point was absolutely bang on about the pseudo reprints and stuff. That is a factor. Like Memory Deluge still being around means we're not playing with Drown in Memories and I don't even know what the other ones are called.
Yeah, there's an Eldraine one as well.
Farsight Ritual.
Sure, Farsight Ritual, all that stuff.
Oh, that's the one,
weird, but at the same time, like, okay, so for example, to prove my point, I can take this RC that just happened in Montreal, in Canada, and I can look at the top 8 here, and yes, Azorius Control took it down. Great. Azorius is a relatively new deck, really. I mean, people have tried to, it's not been tier 1 till No More Lies came out, but now they got 3 steps ahead. I think it's maybe one of the best. Esper Midrange, Dimir Control, sure. And then there's like Simic Artifacts getting top 8. Which was incredible. I wrote an article about it on MTG Circle this week, and it looks like a wild deck. And Ferretta, you said it's based off the deck from Ash Lizzle's stream, I guess, or it looks like the same kind of list, or developed around that list. And so sometimes you get these random outliers, and this is a 365 player tournament here, and somebody top 8'd with Simic cookies, hard hitting cookies, or I don't know what you call the deck, but. It's playing a bunch of, like cards that we don't see anywhere else in Standard. So there is some weird diversity, but like, I don't know. Again, you look at the rest of the top 32, there's no other outliers. Dimir Control got top 4. Like, that's kind of a weird, like, not a well-recognized tier 1 deck.
I would call that one kind of that tier 2. It dances back and forth. There are times when it kind of it has been definitely on top in the past, but it hasn't been recently. Yeah,
it's bizarre. It's super bizarre. You are valid. You are absolutely true in saying it feels the stale and it's the same. But at the same time, it's also true that it's diverse at the top. Like tier 1's diverse, so it's very strange.
And that's why I specify the kind of player that I am, because as a janky brewer who is always trying to create something new and wants to move on to the new thing, like the moment I get a deck that can get a 60% win rate on the ladder, I'm like, cool, I have won at building this deck. I want to put it away, never touch it again, and move on to the next one. That's the kind of player that I am. If you're a competitive player, especially in paper, and you want to perfect every line of a particular deck, and you want to jam, right now, it probably feels the best it ever has, because the gameplay is much more dynamic. Your decision points matter in a way that they often don't. You're in every match, and so I get that. And if you're playing one of these decks and you're enjoying the experience of playing, an Azorius Control deck or an Esper midrange list or one of the Golgari midrange lists, if you're really enjoying that, then enjoy it. Like live the dream right now. As given the kind of player I am, I'm getting tired. I'm burning out. But I can totally accept that plenty of other folks aren't, and that's rad. Again, enjoy it for right now.
It's interesting.
And it's tough doing what you do, like brewing a brand new deck in a format, like you said, that's mostly solved, that like we all know what these shells are capable of. We know how powerful they are, and because there's such a wide diversity of different powerful archetypes at the top, it's so hard to just make a deck that, like you said before we started, can beat Boros Convoke and Domain and Blue-White Control and Esper Midrange, and it's like
those decks are all so wildly different that you
Mhm.
can't make a deck that's going to be good against all these. But that's kind of Magic, like, right? Yeah,
Oh,
like none of
totally.
these decks are good against everything else. But
Well,
it's
and
yeah.
the funny thing is, in the last couple of weeks, I find myself just going back to the exact same deck. I've been playing the same Girl Stompy deck for like the last 2 weeks. And it's kind of funny. It's built around Smuggler Surprise. And I did an article on it over on MTG Circle, actually. And I love this deck. But the thing is, it has a decent matchup against Domain. It has a decent matchup against Control. It folds like a card table against Mono Red or Boros Convoke. It just does. But it eats Golgari for breakfast. And what's great is right now, Azorius Control is being, in my opinion, overplayed on the standard ladder in Platinum and Diamond because of the recent Pro Tour results. Like, everybody's like, Azorius Control is the thing, and so they all bring it. And this deck
great.
has 4 Cavern of Souls in it and 3 Tyrannex Rex in the main.
You're gonna love
Those
this.
folks also enjoy playing 40-minute arena ladder matches.
Well, there's that too.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna love this. Today on stream, I was playing Blue White Control in Diamond.
Yep.
And I faced this deck, and somebody in my chat said, "Oh, it's Ham's deck." And I was like, "What?"
Yes,
and he's like,
I love it.
"That's Hamhawk's deck." I'm like, "What? Really? Are you guys joking?" They're like, "Yeah, watch out for Smuggler's Surprise." And I was like,
Yep.
What does that card do?" And I looked it up. I'm like, "What the?"
It does it on your
And then
end
it
step,
was
and if
pretty
you
good.
counter it, you have the
yeah.
Volborn Tyrant coming next turn with the exactly.
And I have Farewell, and I have these graveyard
Mm-hmm.
hate cards, and I'm like, I'm gonna get them, and I'm like, wait a minute, but I can't eat their graveyard. They mill the 4, and then they get to take it from the mill. I'm like, what? This person was. Are you playing Calamity? They were playing Calamity against me. In a bunch
I
of
didn't. I
random
don't
stuff.
have Calamity in mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Calamity currently is
Anyway.
bugged on Arena, so I don't have it in mind. But I have seen variants with that. But it's doing Terror of the Peaks, Volborn Tyrant.
Terror of the Peaks. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it also has 2 of Galta. And so if I can Smuggler Surprise, Galta, Volborn Tyrant, draw 2 cards, then drop any other creatures that I have into my hand from my hand onto the battlefield. Like I can one shot. I have hit the number of times that my Domain opponent has tapped out to play an Atraxa, and I have responded with the Smuggler Surprise and killed them before the Atraxa resolved. It's not 0. Let me tell you what,
sweet.
it's a lot of fun.
I love it.
So, and that's a deck that is big and explosive, and it has decent matchups against the decks that people are currently playing. And so I can grind the ladder with that and enjoy myself for the most part. Yeah.
So like Boros Convoke or Red
But
Aggro.
Boros Convoke or Mono Red,
you're gonna have an Achilles heel.
Yeah, 100%. Those matches, I just fold, but I would rather lose quickly, which is what I'm doing in those. Yeah.
But the deck I've been experimenting with, you know, I was playing Blue-White Control today, but yesterday, Artifacts. I've been playing with Blue-Red Artifacts, Blue-White Artifacts around Simpson.
Yep.
And there was a list from the Pro Tour. I think they got, I don't know where they ended up placing, top 32, I think one of them got, but it was a Blue-White Artifact control deck. Now, we saw this deck kind of come out in, when Lost Caverns of Ixalan came out, they were using Thousand Moon Smithy and the Glyph Bridge, Unstable Glyph Bridge to sweep, and they were using the 2-mana Fabricator, Foundry, or whatever it's called, the white mana rock that lets you bring artifacts back from the graveyard. But the Thousand Moon Smithy was such a liability, it was not a good win con. Simulacrum, oh my god, this card is so insane. I started playing with this deck and starting to see the crazy stuff you could do. It's playing a couple 3 steps ahead, so copying a Simpson on end step, making a huge thing untap, or like countering a spell, copying your artifact is ridiculous. I actually started splashing red for an Imidane's Recruiter in this deck, and wow, did it take it up a notch. Because so many games, they would sweep, and I would go, okay, here's 4 15-15s. Like, I'd put like 50 power on the battlefield, but I just couldn't like kill them, and man, Imidane's Recruiter out of nowhere, it was the perfect addition. It's so good. You can even hardcast the adventure side if you have to. And I've been having so much fun with this Artifacts deck, Ham. If you're looking for something interesting, you've brewed with Simpson, I'm sure, yourself.
I have, but yeah.
It's so sweet.
That
dude.
sounds amazing.
I was very impressed by that card.
Okay.
And just Thran Spider, Braided Net. I forgot Braided Net can tap down a Planeswalker and turn off all its abilities. I totally forgot you could do stuff. Braided Net draws you like 10. They Atraxa. I have 1
Infinite
card in hand. I'm
cards.
like, watch this. I'm like, I draw 10.
Silly.
Their Atraxa
my
drew them
goodness.
5, and I draw twice as much. It's a crazy deck. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been surprisingly resilient. It dodges Go for the Throat like nobody's business. None of your stuff gets touched by the most commonly played removal in the format, from Cut Down to Go for the Throat to Get Lost. None of it matters. So you're just like, nobody's playing a Braid. Nobody's playing Brotherhood's End. As soon as that starts happening, you got to put this. You got to put it back on the shelf. But kind of like Modern, we were talking about, same kind of thing. These linear strategies are so powerful when people forget, or not forget, they underestimate how popular this deck is going to be in that tournament, in that FNM, in that RCQ, whatever it is. And you leave your graveyard hate at home, and then Dredge crushes the tournament, or you leave your
Exactly.
artifact. And I did that one time at a PTQ, crushed it with Affinity. After everybody's like, yeah, Affinity won the last Pro Tour, but now everybody's ready for it, so nobody's going to play it. So let's
Right.
shave this. They shave the artifact hate because nobody's going to play it, and then you show up and you do well. And this deck right now in Standard, like a braid is legal. Like all these
Yeah,
cards
not
are legal,
enough
but
people are playing that
nobody's
card,
playing them.
And not
Yeah.
enough people are playing Brotherhood then either. And that
Brotherhood
wipes
Zen
all
is-
the tokens
yeah.
plus these cards.
Yeah.
And,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's so interesting because, just during the last RCQ season, we're talking before, Thunder Junction, you had the blue-white artifact deck was kind of just like a tier 2.5 deck. And,
Yeah.
you were just getting value with like 1,000 Moonsmithy.
Mhm.
Now you don't even see these decks touching 1,000 Moonsmithy because they don't
No.
have to. And that card was busted, in my opinion, in that
It
deck.
was powerful. Yeah,
it
it was just the land got Field of Ruin. Like when Blue White Control's playing 4 Field of Ruin and a bunch of decks are playing Field of Ruin, I don't want my win
Yep.
condition to be this land. And so the synthesizer's just so much better. Not
So
only is it cheaper and easier to cast and scries you, but
And you get
Yeah.
to play cards like 3 steps ahead. And so that acts as a
Yeah.
counterspell or to copy the synthesizer.
Yeah.
Or can do both if you have enough mana.
it's beautifully designed, the synthesizer. The fact
Oh.
that they trigger off each other is so ridiculous. So yeah, when you copy a synthesizer, when you play 2 synthesizers, you can't, like, you put out so much power. Even if they sweep, you're just immediately refilling the board with like 50 power
They need
every
to have
single
farewell.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. That's another card that's not seeing a ton of play that I was playing again in Blue White today, and I'm very happy with it again. But yeah, not a lot of other decks are playing it. We saw, Utah's deck from the Pro Tour not play Farewell, so hey, great. Copy and paste that list and I'll play Simpson all day against you. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
I'm not about to tell Yuta Takahashi's doing anything wrong, but at the same
No,
time,
right.
like, yeah.
Well,
but that's one you might
and he
want to
was right.
consider.
For that tournament, and that's what's so funny
Mm-hmm.
about and Worlds and these smaller tournaments. Now the Pro Tour is a big tournament and it's only getting bigger. They added a lot more invites, so which is good. But because like Fervetto said, a lot of these Pro Tour lists, it's still not like going to your local, even an RC. Like you're really just laser focused on the other pro teams and what they're doing. So if you get wind of what they're doing, then yeah, absolutely putting this one of like make disappear in the main deck of his blue white control deck, or you saw some of these players doing what you mentioned, putting these one ofs, and yeah, part of it I think is just putting their personal touch on the deck, but also part of it is like they have specific reasons for wanting that card, and it has to do with what they're expecting the other pro teams to bring, because it's that kind of inbred at that top level. They're not worried about the people who want a PTQ in Podunk, Alabama in limited, and they're going to show up and probably get smashed or whatever. The pros aren't too concerned about the people who like this is their first pro tour. They're
Sure.
concerned about Team Channel Fireball. What is Team what are they? I don't even remember the Handshake and
yeah.
Sanctum of All, and
Yep.
these big teams. What are they doing? So let's like pre-game or pre kind of board against them. It's interesting, but that's a sweet deck. I don't know. Well, I can talk. I wanted to talk about one more deck, but you guys, what are you playing for Retta right now in Standard? Before I keep rambling.
Well, I was
Oh.
brewing a Gruul ramp deck that I was
Okay.
playing a bunch of Vaultborn Tyrants in. No Terror of the Peaks. It was just like Galta into playing Vaultborn Tyrants and Atalis and such, because who doesn't like doing that?
So good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Recently, I've been playing a lot of Domain, and the Domain deck I've
Okay.
been playing has been Andrea Mengucci's version that he actually won a PTQ with at like on the Sunday of the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
And it is a 5-color Domain deck that takes advantage of Ancient Cornucopia, and quite frankly is why this card is seeing a price spike right now. This card
Yup.
is insane in that version of Domain, because you are playing some number of copies of Lightning Helixes, which is 2 colors. You're playing 4 copies of Ill-Timed Explosion, which will gain you 2 life, draw 2 cards. Don't have to discard cards, but you can, and you can Wrath with it after. And who would have thought in Domain I can discard Herd Migration and deal 7 to the whole board, which is effectively a 4-mana Wrath.
Seems good.
And so the Cornucopias, each trigger will happen. I can cast Atraxa and gain 4 life, put 6 cards in my hand, Like,
Because you
that is
needed
a big deal.
Atraxa to gain you more life.
insane-
That was the
insane
Well-
value. Exactly.
yeah.
But the little
Yeah.
incremental game life, whether it's from Lightning Helix or from Cornucopia triggers, really matters against the aggressive decks like Convoke that's just trying to kill you fast. If you can land a Cornucopia before death, and this is very real, and you wrath them with ill-timed explosion, you're back in the game. Unless they have some super secret big haster to come after you afterwards.
Right.
And that particular deck struggles a little bit against control, even while having access to Cavern of Souls for Atraxa and Archangel of Wrath. It does. Your ill-timed explosions just turn into draw twos. Your ancient cornucopias don't matter against the control decks. And honestly, I think that version of the domain deck should be playing some number of Jace Perfected Mind in the sideboard for the mirror match and for against the control decks to mill them out. It's a legit win condition and was doing that before.
Yeah, you're right.
So I've had a lot of games with it. Honestly, I went from Diamond 4 to Mythic playing that deck recently, and it was a pretty smooth sailing experience. I think I went in total 11-2 or something like that for that run, or whatever it is, 12-2. And I was able to play it in a standard Magic Online League recently, which I did okay. I think I went like 3-2 and lost to like 2 lands decks, like Temur Reclamation, which is kind of hard of a matchup in my opinion. But it's been a smooth sailing domain deck. I would 100% play that over all other domain variants. After my experience, the Topiary Stomper Invasion Zendikar version can go goodbye. It's it's inferior to Minkuchi's version.
So Pam, go ahead.
No, Damien, take it away. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, just before the Pro Tour, I was telling people to play Astral Cornucopia or Ancient Cornucopia. One of my buddies was going to the Montreal RC and he was going to play Domain, and he said, "Do you have any hits?" And I said, "I listened to Jake Beardsley, Pro Tour champ from Lord of the Rings, speaking about what he was going to play at the Pro Tour on a podcast, and he said, I'm really interested in testing this Ancient Cornucopia card. I think it's good. I'm playing 2 of them right now, and I think it's good." And I was like, I'm going to try this. So this was the week before the Pro Tour. I played 2 of them, and I even played like a final showdown and stuff. He was kind of high on that card as well. But the Cornucopia, super impressed, and for exactly the reasons you said. All of the, first of all, the aggro decks are the worst matchup for Domain in a lot of, whether it's Ban Toxic or Mono Red or Boros can be really tough. And that little bit of life gain, all you need is to untap after casting Atraxa. But so many games you would slam Atraxa, draw your full grip of Sunfalls and Leylines and all your tools to beat them, and they would just kill you because you couldn't. They would kill your Atraxa, they would bounce your Atraxa, whatever it was, and just kill you. That extra life, even if it's just the 4 life from Atraxa or another, I would say it gains you about 4 or 5 life on average. If you're in a regular Domain shell, I'm saying I was playing 2 or 3. And it was gaining me about 4 life or 5 life in a game. And that was enough to get me 1 more turn. And that's all you need when you cast Atraxa and your hand is full and they have 1 card. You just need that 1 more turn to untap, right? And stabilize. So it was very impressive. I played exactly the list. As soon as that Menguchi list came out, I played the same deck. I tried it. It felt really good. It felt like, obviously, it was geared more toward beating aggro. Like, it was like you were main boarded against aggro. It was almost impossible to lose against aggro. It felt great. But that explosion was not always a good enough wrath. Like, Rafine got to 5 or 6 toughness, and I just couldn't. I needed to discard an Atraxa, and I'm like, but wait, I need to cast this Atraxa, and it's like there were awkward moments. I like the deck, but what you said, it's not great against the other big mana decks, the big late game decks. It seems like it's a more tuned to beat aggro Domain list. But a sweet take on the deck. I thought Cornucopia super impressed me. I think if you're playing Domain, whether it's that version or not, you should be playing this card. It was very good.
It's crazy. You can go turn 2 up the Beanstalk, turn 3 cast the Cornucopia, and still have mana up for your Leyline Binding for 1 mana. Draw a card, gain a life on your opponent's turn. It's so powerful.
That seems
it's
good.
very good.
Well, and I think it's funny. People ask, is Domain going to stick around after rotation? I mean, this is it. Like, the Stomper Invasion of Zendikar ramp package, it was a key, component of that deck in the past. And Topiary Stomper was just about the only non-land card that the deck was losing. And it is losing the tri-lands, which is a factor, but we still have the Surveil lands as well. And I know people talk, but they can't hit you with a turn 2 Leyline Binding. It's like, true, but how often was that really the problem? you know?
Yeah, and Leyline Binding and Herd Migration are still legal, and those cards are the backbone of the deck.
Mhm.
That is the reason you're playing that. Those two cards are
Yeah.
so powerful. And
Right.
Atraxa, of course, but
Well, yeah.
And
you
for
can
sure,
always
the
ramp
deck-
into...
The deck gets slower for sure.
Right.
But also remember that Splunkane is here, and you can cast Splunkane on 3 and ramp a land still, just like Topiary Stomper did. Granted, it's from your hand. And then all of your lands enter play untapped. So when you play a Surveil land, you're good. And you got two basic land types. And this is also assuming nobody's going to attempt to run Leyline of the Guild Pact in those decks to make them have all basic land types.
Yeah.
You know, another innovation on this deck that I'm seeing recently is people playing the Niv Mizzet from Aftermath. That has
The 7
gives
mana
your
one?
instance. No, 5 mana. Oh, maybe I'm thinking about the
Aftermath.
wrong one.
Nimbus
Oh,
Supreme?
Nimbus Supreme. Yep.
Supreme.
Yep, 5/5
Oh.
flying, hexproof from monocolored, so good luck, go for the throat. And then it gives your instants and sorceries that are exactly 2 colors jumpstart. So all those cards that I just mentioned that gain you 2 life off the cornucopia, you get to
rebuy them.
Give your lighting. It's so silly. It's so silly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's good silly. And
But hey,
it allows you to play some of the off-color. Well, I say off-color, but there's still 2-color spells. You can still play like Molten Collapse. Think about like Assassin's Trophy if you really want. Like,
I mean,
you can
the
cast
stats are
those
good.
cards in the domain deck. I'm not saying it's good, but you can cast it.
It's interesting. The stats are there. I mean, 5 mana, 5/5 flyer, hexproof from spot removal, basically. Like most spot removal that's one color probably.
And
is
it's
the only thing that can hit
unblockable
this.
from. I mean, obviously, Rafine and Atrax that we've been talking about can block it, but you know, you can't jump it with your Fairy Masterminds or your Duelist of the Mines or anything like that. So.
Oh, you can. It's just hexproof.
Oh, it's just hexproof. I'm sorry, it's not full protection. Don't mind me. Don't mind me. But
it's
yeah.
I think
If somebody
good.
beats me with this, I'm not mad.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I would love to see something like this be good enough. It's a tall order, though. I mean, even the domain decks now, even with the tri-lands, they're mostly 2-color decks. They're green-white ramp splashing, you know, for the keeper on this one card and this one other thing, and that's like basically if we're just doing domain to get Leyline and Herd Migration to be amazing, right? But so we'll see what happens. I think it's cool. The other deck I was playing this week that I thought was super sweet. I don't know. I got a list from somebody in a back alley, in a dark alley. I don't know where it came from. I think it was originally from a Nassif list, and it's playing Micromancer. That's right. You forgot that card existed? That card apparently is absolutely ridiculous with spree cards. So I'm playing 4 Micromancer. It's a blue-black control deck, and I can fetch a giant toolbox of spree cards. There's things like 3 Steps Ahead, which is absolutely busted because you go Micromancer, get my 3 steps, copy the Micromancer with the 3 steps, second half, counterspell, copy Micromancer, get another 3 steps. The second one counters, gets another 3 steps. So you just get to find all your counters. Wash Away, hard counter for 1. Black Sun's Twilight. Obviously, you're getting cut downs. You're getting Dreams of Steel and Oil or Duress. March of Wretched Sorrow. You've got other... let me see if I can find them. Consider Rona's Vortex as a one-of that I was picking up. Insatiable Avarice I was playing a one-of. So it's basically this blue-black control deck, and you get to play this whole toolbox of like 1-mana spree cards with Micromancer. It felt so sweet. I recommend you try and, I don't know if you're into that kind of stuff. I love Mystical Teachings, all right? Just want to have a toolbox again.
Hey, listen, we were just talking about the old days of Modern before we started recording today, and I was like, why can't we play the sweet Mystical Teachings decks anymore? And that's just how strong that format is. And here you are doing it with Micromancer, and it's great.
It's sweet. It's really beautiful. Just beautiful with 3 Steps Ahead. It feels so awesome to go get a 3 Steps Ahead with this card. 3 Steps Ahead is so awesome in just every deck I played in, whether it's the Artifacts deck or Control or this. Anyway, it was super fun. If you're looking for something goofy, I'd try build around Micromancer and spree cards. I was doing a blue-black shell, but you could probably do... I don't even know, blue-white. There's some powerful spree cards in a lot of colors. So
yeah, I mean, you got Final Showdown in white. You've got is Great Train Heist one in red. I mean, you could get.
Oh, I don't even know. Yeah, Great Train.
Yeah. Let me
from the new set. Yeah.
Yeah.
That lets you take extra combat steps.
Extra combats, mixed treasures.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Super
So
burn bright. You can do
as long as you have the
Yeah.
micro, and the 3 steps is the same color as micro. So you start with that core,
yep.
and then you can go Jeskai or Esper or blue black or blue white or whatever you want to do.
I mean,
I thought it was
Smuggler
really
Surprise would also be fetchable. I can't imagine a deck would want both,
Right.
but hey, you never know.
Smuggler Surprise. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Let's get silly. Why not? Yeah.
So you can do a lot of crazy stuff, and standard. I know the ladder. I don't know. Sometimes I run into just meta decks back, round after round. But I do run into a lot of people goofing around still, and it's the arena ladder, of course. We're not, MTGO leagues. You probably get better competition and stuff, but there's a lot of brewing that's happening, and a lot of people. You think after the Pro Tour, everybody would be on the same lists, but that's just I haven't seen that to be true. I mean, people are trying new stuff. People are still experimenting, and I don't know if people just don't care because we're winding down here. So it's like, let's just. I know Esper's the best deck, or this deck, or Blue White Control is great domain. I just want to play whatever for the last little while here in standard.
Yep.
But what do you think we're going to see at this RC? You mentioned there's an RC in Dallas, right?
Yeah. So DreamHack Dallas is coming up at the last weekend of May into June. And in Atlanta there was something like 1,300 players there. Yeah. There's certainly going to be more than that now over in Dallas for sure. And I know a bunch of people who are just flying there to want to play in the last chance qualifiers.
The LCQs,
because they actually want to play standard. Believe it or not, standard is popular again. More people want to play papered standard tournaments, for those of you who are listening out there that this matters for. 1,400 plus people in a big tournament like this. It is a lot. It's a lot of rounds of Magic. I think they make them play 10 rounds on day one. They play 9. They cut to what would be your next day, but make you play the first day of day 2, or the first round of day 2 on that first day. I know that sounds confusing, but they do that to try to make day 2 less time consuming, but it makes day 1 more time consuming. But that's just the reality for how big the tournament is.
Right.
And, you can brew, like Damien was saying, you can brew what you want against the metagame that's diverse. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be testing for this RC, whether it's on Arena, and I've said plenty times on this podcast so far, the amount of people I saw going to RCQs bringing their Arena decks. First time playing RCQs. First time playing paper Magic because they started on Arena. But also the same thing for people who are playing on Magic Online too, right? Like they're playing their decks in challenges and leagues, and they want to take it to paper Magic and see how they can do. And we got 2 tournaments coming up this month before the regional championship. That's free to play in on Hollywood Pizza's channel.
Are they both standard? Or what
standard?
Formats?
Yep,
both?
They're both standard.
Oh wow,
both
great.
Standard. So May 19th and May 26th. Those are Sundays. We will be doing standard over on Hollywood Pizza channel. And we get like 140 plus people that sign up for these tournaments. And honestly, for me, those tournaments are a brewer's paradise. Like, take what you want to play, jam it against a more competitive type of environment, and see how you do. And they're so popular that they essentially cap out like the first 2 or 3 days of registration.
Yeah, and so we're gonna have links to the Hollywood Pizza tournament series, like the organizer link over on Melee in the show notes. So that's where you can register for these tournaments and keep an eye out for any upcoming ones as they get announced. So feel free to bookmark that and come back regularly because they're a blast. And I completely agree. People can bring all kinds of fun stuff, and we have seen like the Swiss and the Hollywood Pizza tournaments are always amazing because you never know. There's always going to be some weird rogue deck, and every now and then somebody goes on a heater. I would just see Noble Murloc take some goofy, creation into the top 8. Like, it happens. It's great. It's super fun to watch. And, and even if it doesn't, even if it's an O2 drop or a 1-3 drop or whatever the case may be, you see some fun games and you learn a lot about what opportunities and what synergies are out there because it's a free tournament.
Yep.
What do you have to lose? I mean, you were going to be playing that deck on Arena anyway, right? So why not do it there? Anyway, they're always a blast. So Yeah, good
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a good shout out. I hope I can join one time this month. I'm gonna try and look at that. I didn't know that he'd scheduled a couple more. I should try and get into one.
So the last order of business that we kind of wanted to touch on, there was a pretty bizarre kind of drama and event that occurred at a recent RC. And Damien, I believe you're the one who kind of mentioned this, kind of brought us into the fold. So do you want to tell the folks at home what happened? What exactly was going on with this?
Well, there's some people I know who were at this RC because it was up in Canada, in Montreal, and one of them was telling me what happened in his tournament after, and he's part of this group of friends that I guess one of the players in his group was paired against Eduardo Sajulik, a former pro and still a grinder, plays a lot on the ladder or plays a lot in these tournaments and PTQs, RCs and everything. Pretty regular face, I guess. So a lot of people know who he is. Anyway, this arrangement happens where they're in the penultimate round. This is the win in. And they make a deal ahead of time in front of witnesses and everything, make it official. They said, you're playing Domain, I'm playing Teamer Fireballs. I think Eduardo was on Teamer Fireballs. The other guy was on Domain. They said, look, there's a very high chance we're going to go to time this round. Obviously, if you played in any high-level events, even the Pro Tour, you saw how many draws there were. A lot of late-game decks in Standard right now. So they said, we're going to cut this off, nip it in the bud and just say, look, if we go to turns, if we go to end of the game, and it looks like it's going to be a draw, let's agree. Neither of us can draw here. One of us is going to get top 8 or whatever, top 12, whatever it is, which is the Pro Tour invite. They were fighting for the 12th spot here. The top 12 spots give an invite. So they said, if it comes to that, we're going to agree that whichever, person is winning on the board or in the game will win the match. The other person is going to concede. Deal? Deal. They shake on it. And so they proceed to play their match. They go to turns. 5 extra turns. They are almost at the end of extra turns. It's turn 4 of extra turns. And the Domain player has resolved an Atraxa, refilled their hand. They're in very dominant position. And then it goes back to Teamer Fireball's player who plays a couple things and then ends the game. And the game's over. So they both look at each other and like the player who's playing Domain is like, well, it's clear I'm going to win this match. And the other guy says, Eduardo just says, no, I'm going to draw. I'm not going to give you the win. Because I guess he saw right next to him the other match that was going on drew. And he knew that if there's another match that drew and they draw, there's a chance that he can be 12th on tiebreakers. And this is where this whole aspect of Magic and making deals gets really murky and a lot of leaves a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths. Mm-hmm. Basically, they made a deal because this is based on the information at the time ahead of time. Now that, I guess this other match had drawn, Eduardo basically said no. And, there's nothing technically binding him to be beholden to holding up his end of the bargain. He's basically just able to just say, no, I'm going to take the draw. So he did. And this caused obviously a huge uproar with the player base who said, like, this kind of stuff happens all the time. Nobody ever just like decides to not go through with it. It's like but it is a gentleman's agreement or whatever you want to call it. It's a verbal agreement. They shook on it, but this isn't a binding contract. So anyway, he doesn't concede. They draw. Both of them end up missing. Eduardo ends up landing in 13th place, missing the Pro Tour invite. So he went back on his word for nothing, essentially. The other player ends up, I don't know, top 32. But of course, the aftermath of this on Twitter, it exploded and it became a big discussion. And I don't care about the people involved in the drama and everything. I'm more concerned with this. It draws attention to this aspect of the game that is not often talked about, where these deals happen, prize splits. People, you have to be very careful about what you say. You can't offer monetary reward for a concession in a game of Magic. You cannot offer anything outside of the game in terms of compensation. That will get you disqualified, and it's big trouble. Be careful. If you're ever not sure about how to prize split or anything, call a judge. You always call a judge when this kind of thing happens. But these are two very experienced players. They knew exactly what they were doing. They've done this kind of thing all the time. So Eduardo going back on his word pissed off a lot of people. Now, I didn't actually know this, but Favretto mentioned there used to be an actual, like, WotC actually enforced these things, or there was people who got in trouble for breaking these kind of deals. Can you speak to that? I'd never heard of this.
Well, it really leads to the whole thing why stuff like that is very carefully talked about at tournaments like RCQs and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because the moment you say something wrong, you're out of there. They just DQ you, right? To try to prevent any type of collusion, even if it's somebody who's not, even if you're not meaning to do that. But you just don't know how to formulate the words correctly. The moment you say something wrong, out, right?
Yep.
Which is why everybody should always just be talking to judges to make sure that they're not saying anything that's going to put them in that predicament.
Right.
I think this particular issue or situation just shows like somebody's being really scummy here because, it's not like you're playing for nothing. One, there's a lot of prize money involved. Two, there are cards that are worth higher monetary value, like special editions of cards. And this guy, Eduardo, goes ahead and takes a picture of the consolation prize for coming in 13th because they don't know how to do breakers correctly, and posts that on social media talking about it's a consolation prize that he got because he was scummy. I wish I could put it in a nicer way, but it is unfortunate.
Well,
like, yes, you have these conversations before a match, like what happens, like this is a win and in, a draw might potentially take us both out. What do we do here? If you entered into this gentleman's agreement before the match started, before any cards were played, that's affecting the pace of play for that entire match, right? Because if we go to time, this is what's going to happen, and it could happen either way. Somebody could be slow playing intentionally to get like a game 1 win or something. And if somebody's slow playing game 1, that's going to cause game 2 to be slower, which is going to eventually result in that draw. Not saying people are doing these things on purpose, but when you're making an agreement like that, it's setting that up too, right?
Oh yeah. I mean,
so that's why you just have to be like very careful. And RC is way different than like your RCQ. Again, because of the monetary rewards that are there. But the winner would have gotten an invite to the Pro Tour.
Well, that's the screwed up thing. One of them could have gotten an invite, but if by drawing neither one of them gets an invite, that was the whole purpose of making that arrangement. They basically said, there's a high chance of us drawing here. That can't happen. Both of us don't want to lose. Why don't one of us at least get the invite? But in the end, he decides to risk it, and both of them get burned. One of them should have gotten an invite, and neither one did because of his going back on his word. So it just like all these factors just created this like, you're right about the prize splitting. When it comes to judges, like the judge is your lawyer. It's like they're not talking to the cops when you don't have a lawyer present, right? The judge is your lawyer. Call your lawyer, call your judge over, and make sure that you don't say anything, like you said, that incriminates you and makes it seem like you're, because they're very strict about that. But this is different. This isn't the prize splitting stuff. This isn't that kind of, or this is like a weird agreement outside the game to do the right thing, which is let's put one of us into the top 12. And then to go back on it and everything, anyway, caused this huge uproar, and it kind of introduced an aspect that I think a lot of digital players don't ever really experience, and that is this whole deal making and the clock as a weapon. I mean, on Arena, I know how much time I have. I know how much time they have. If they're slower than me, I don't have to worry about it. But in real life, when your opponent's slower than you, I mean, there are Hall of Fame pros, or I don't know if Tomohiro Saito got banned for 18 months for gaming the clock in a tournament, and he was one of the top players in the world at the time. You can get in big trouble if you do it enough, and then you have a pattern of doing this. You can get a ban for things like slow playing and gaming the clock. It's poker and other games have this too. When everybody's waiting for the next round of blinds to go up, and I just need to survive. So gaming the clock is a weird aspect of tournament magic that is a tool in your arsenal, and some people wield it. Other people leave it sheathed for the most part, but some people will wield that time and leverage it against you and try to This was a weird case where they kind of knew they were going to draw, and then it was not about the time. They kind of expect what happened. It happened. They were both expecting it, and then to just go back on that really, and the way it all ended really really left a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths, and people were pissed off. It just opens up this whole, should this be allowed? Should people be able to make deals like this? I don't know. Like, does a judge come in and say, no, it's a draw. You don't win. It's a draw. Like, you can't do that, right?
So I mean, listen, draw the line. Yeah.
Even at the RCQ level, even before they've changed this rule, starting with the Star City RC that feeds the current RC season that feeds Washington DC, they changed the rule. Before it was, if you already won an RCQ, you can't participate in RCQs for the rest of the season. This current season's changed that. you can keep playing in RCQs, but obviously you can't stack invites.
Right. So what
it
happens?
allows those people to play the events, and if they literally are going to play for prize, like that's fine. They can still play for prize. I'll put it in this situation. When I go to an RCQ, okay, my goal is to win an invite. I could give a damn if I win any prize at all. The goal for an RCQ for me, and that's just the type of player I am, is win the invite, get to the next tournament. If I had the option to say, you know, from a legitimate point of view, I want to take nothing. The rest of y'all can take whatever. Let's battle for the invite. Redistribute prize however you want. I'm a fan of prize splits. When we reach top 8 and the players are asking about a prize split, I just say, yeah, why don't we just chop it equally always? We don't care about the prize. Let's go ahead and just battle for the invite. And that allows for the players who aren't there to play for the invite to bow out. Right? And then you just let the people that are there playing for the invites to keep going. Because quite frankly, there are people, even, you know, the last RCQ season that are playing every tournament and they don't care about the invite and they're actually there playing for the prize. Fine, then let that conversation happen in terms of how you want to distribute prize in the proper way, making sure that the judge is involved and stuff like this. And you prevent these situations from happening. Different standpoint in this particular tournament where they're in this last round of the tournament that matters. The judges want to make sure that the event happens on time and that people aren't stalling to make decisions, because that will lead to other tables questioning decisions that they are making, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's crazy to me. You know, I would say I was in one RCQ I played in the last season. I was in a similar situation where we're in the last round. Do we want to take the draw? And opponent was like, don't you want to wait to see what happens in the other table? I said, no, we can make a gentleman's agreement now and we abide by this. It's like a similar situation. Do we want to choose to draw or not? Like, it has to be made now. Yes, is there a chance that none of us get it? Yeah. Is there a chance that one of us might make it? Yeah. And unfortunately, I ended up in 9th and opponent ended up in 8th. It's just the way tiebreakers work, right? But it was determined based on what happened on the other table. If player A on table 2 won, that changed the tiebreakers for us. So, you know, but if we just played it out, you know, there was a possibility we could have both made it if the tiebreakers worked the way that they needed to be with the draw. But there was just no guarantee. So it's like, do you take the gamble or do you play it out and see what happens? You know, but that's between players and honoring that agreement that you made right then and there. And you submit those results immediately. So this doesn't happen. But in that particular situation that we just talked about, that wasn't possible because their decision was to be made at the conclusion of the time of the round.
Yeah, it's a slightly different thing, but I know what you're saying. It just, I know a lot of players who really dislike when they hear somebody scooping their friend into the top 8, or when they hear pro teams doing this. Like, to them, that's like cheating or some kind of like, wait a minute, this person just has such a good win rate, they can just go draw into the top 8 or draw into the top 8 at the end. Like, that seemed like, what? Like, shouldn't they have to play their matches? Like, this rubs a lot of players the wrong way. Like, a lot of players feel like this is like bordering into some gray area of like ethically speaking. But I think you like any pro player, any tournament player absolutely understands the need for this. You need to be able to do this stuff, and it has to happen. They will never make a rule where, you know, you can't prize split or you can't have these discussions. So it's a weird part of Magic. I just thought, you know, we don't hear about it often, and it flared up recently at the, you know, this RC that just happened on the weekend. So I was wondering what you guys thought about that, and you know, what advice do you give players going forward for the prize split thing? Always call a judge. But what if a player says, you know, let's wait to see what happens in that match over there. So for Redo, you basically say no, like let's settle this now, take the draw or not or whatever. Let's play our draw.
I like that. I like the idea of just let's right here, right now at this table, let us just do the thing, you know? And when we talk about prize splitting, that's one thing, but I mean, intentional draws and those kinds of, you know, game actions to affect the final standings. I don't know. There's something about that I know to me kind of feels odd. Like if I'm
Yeah, it's weird.
if I'm in a tournament environment and I'm clearly not going to make it to the top 8 even with a win, but I want to play the final round, and my opponent might make it in, am I a jerk for wanting to play the game and potentially win that match and ruin their day, even if I'm incapable of winning anything? Because at the end of the day, I'm still just doing the tournament that I came there to do. And trying to get my best standing at the end of the day. Like, am I being a problem? Am I a jerk in that case?
No, but there are players
I don't
who
feel
make
like
you feel
that.
like.
Yeah,
there are players who act like jerks because they're. What do you mean you're not scooping to me? You have no chance of being top 8. What do you mean? I could get in on breakers. You should just scoop to me. Like, this kind of stuff happens. At
and ruin the other person's day who's trying to fight for it against somebody else because it's not as easy for them as it is for you. I feel like
that do that
it seems nuts to me.
Meaning that they do it to try to get their friend in. So like, if you need to ensure that so many people, like if your friend that's playing in the tournament's record matters for your tiebreakers at all, and you need somebody to lose to get less a tiebreaker so yours is higher. I mean, that happens all the time. I see that.
And you see that too. I mean, like I can't help but think about like racing, like car racing, or even you see it with marathons and stuff where people are on a team. This is ostensibly an individual sport, but they let each other draft off of each other to save some energy and like get into the, and help box each other out and those kind of things. That kind of stuff happens all the time. Yep. So,
but to me, it's
of course
different.
that could happen in Magic too.
But that is in the event. That is in the game. They're both participants in that one game. Whereas Magic, this stuff is not in the game. It's not part of the game. It's happening outside the game, but it's like affecting, it's not affecting anything in game. Like there's no, it's not like your teammates are helping you win the match, but they're like, so it's weird. You're right. It's a good analogy, but I don't know. It's not quite the same. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway,
it doesn't. It's funny because it feels a little scummy from a certain angle, but from another angle, participating, I don't know, it's odd. I'm trying to see it from every perspective.
What I recommend for people who are not sure, like you want some actionable advice, honestly, the best way to combat shadiness a lot of times is to understand the system and how people are exploiting it. So you should understand tiebreakers. I recommend any tournament Magic player. That is one of the fundamental things that I didn't think about for a long time. I'm practicing my deck and trying to get the metagame read and all this other stuff. And then I get to a point in the tournament where the tiebreakers matter and my opponent just goes, what do you think? Do you want to draw? And I'm like, I have to like call my teammate over and I'm like, I don't know, if I draw here, what happens? Like, am I going to get, blah, blah, blah. I had to learn how to like look at it, go, okay, their match win percentage is this person's is this. Okay, who are the range of players that could potentially leapfrog me here? And what, all that stuff. I recommend if you're serious about tournament Magic, this is an aspect of the game that is outside the game itself. It's not play testing. It's not tuning your deck or any of that other stuff. This is something that is important to learn. Just like watching the clock and making sure you play accordingly when you're getting low on time when you're using a slow deck. But reading tiebreakers, I know so many competitive players who are not able to do it. They rely on their teammates to like tell them if they can draw in or not. It's like, learn how to do that yourself. That way, if somebody tries to pull shady stuff on you, you will be able to say, no, you know what? I can see that I'm not going to be, I don't have any chance to get in top 8 if I draw here. You do, not me. So no, we're going to play this out. But so many players don't know the difference, so they get taken advantage of, and I think that's where a lot of the like negativity and like people looking down on it, and it is weird. It is a weird aspect of the game, but I think it can be managed, and you don't have to fear it or worry about getting scammed or cheated or whatever. Somebody taking advantage of you. Just educate yourself. Learn how the tiebreakers work.
Yeah, that's part of preparation, right?
Do you know? Do you know where you can't intentionally draw?
Where's that?
It beats box standard tournaments.
Hey.
Play it out, baby.
When you're facing my blue-white control deck, there's no way out. You'll never escape. We're going to go to time every round.
Every round. Hey, but anyway. That's fine because I'm playing aggro. Like, I'm going to be here this whole round, but you got a whole day with no P breaks. Enjoy.
Exactly.
Anyway.
That's right.
Anyway, so Magic drama. Was there anything else you guys want to hit on?
Interesting stuff. Yeah. No, that's really cool. End of the day, honor your word. Don't be a jerk. That's really just, I feel like a lot of drama when it comes down to it, like whether or not it was against the rules, it was a bit of an angle shoot. It was somebody being a little scummy. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
that's arguable. It is what it is. Don't
And hey,
be the person we're talking about the next time we're
him
talking
be,
about one of these stories.
Yeah.
Let him be tried, convicted, and punished in the court of public opinion. Like that's
Mhm.
That's
the
right.
people came out and man, there was like it was a
Oh, yeah.
big. It was only for a day or two, but it was like all people were talking about for a day. Like, holy crap, did you hear about this? I can't believe this. And
Well,
good, make him feel bad. That's
when these kind of things happen, there's also the social credit that this person doesn't have. The next time they're in a situation where they offer a draw or they offer one of these kinds of preparations, the other person is just like, no, hard pass. Whatever you're looking for here, you're not getting it from me. And so is it worth it? Long term, is it worth it?
Be a professional human being out there, all right? To everybody, in game, even your opponents, just treat them with respect, have some dignity, some integrity, and it's not hard to do.
No, not really.
Anyway, a good message to send our listeners off with.
Absolutely. So with that, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been an absolute delight. So please follow, leave a review in your podcast app of choice. Before we go, let's go ahead and do quick plugs around the horn. Damien, where can people find you on the internet? What are you doing these days?
People can find me on Twitch 6 days a week, as well as YouTube. Every single day dropping content. Damien F16 on Twitch and on YouTube, Damien F16.
And Carlo, how about you, man?
Yeah, so you can find me on all the platforms. I do stream live on Twitch like 4 to 5 days a week, typically in the evenings, like 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time type of start. You can find me on all the platforms at the same handle, cfavretto_junior. I did recently start a YouTube channel in January, so if you want to head over there, I would appreciate that. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm editing at my own pace, but I'm trying. So check it out. I do just want to announce real quick, just a few things. I am doing a charity stream on May the 25th from 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time over on my channel. It is for Stack Up, which is an organization that helps support veterans' mental health through gaming. So it's going to be a charity fundraiser. I'm going to try to raise $1,000 for them in a 10-hour stream. Going to have some cool giveaways, arena code giveaways, and stuff like this over on the channel. So it would mean the world to me if you came over at least on that day and come and checked out what we were doing.
Nice.
That rules, man. Good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Very cool. Well, yeah, and
How about you, Ham?
I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/hamhux42, trying to brew in standard until I can't take it anymore, in which case, actually, today I did something I never do on my stream, and I actually played a non-arena game during my normal time slot. I actually played a little bit of Untitled Goose Game for an hour just to unwind, and I gotta say,
there you
delightful.
go.
Hell yeah.
Tons of fun. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Hanging out, talking smart, just being we were still talking about Magic the whole time, because that's just, it is what it is. But in any event. But yes, so love to see you over there. Doing YouTube stuff and social media stuff. Links below for all the members of the team. I actually, fun fact, for anybody out there who has never actually looked at the description in one of these episodes on the podcast apps or YouTube, the links are down there to Hollywood Pizzas, the Pizza Box tournaments, as well as the other members of the team who you've heard on the show, whether they're not on any particular episode. I just make sure that those who are here have top billing in the list. So, but if you're ever like, hey, that Headology was pretty fun, I wonder what she's up to. Fun fact, that link's down there. So just go check out all the things, all the links. Yeah, we'd appreciate it. And with that, thank you for tuning in, folks. We appreciate you. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, stay good to each other and stay janky.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.